Mabuhay! I'm Jessica Garcia from BSICM 2-2 and together with my groupmate Joshua Toca, we will discuss all about Northern Europe. Without further ado, let's get started. In this discussion, we will learn about the following: countries and culture, topography, ingredients, methodology, famous dishes, special preparation, and facts about Northern Europe. Let's proceed. On the screen, you can see the different countries in the Northern Europe. It consists of Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Ireland, and United Kingdom. As you can see on the design of the flags, some have almost the same features, like the Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Its design is like a horizontal cross, while the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia have a triple horizontal lines in different colors. Next is, Northern Europe is considered as land of the Vikings. It's because the seafaring warriors known collectively as Vikings or Norsemen came from the word Northmen, began by raiding coastal sites, especially undefended monasteries in the British Isles. Now let us learn the physical features of Northern Europe. The Northern Europe consists of two regions. The British Isles are a group of islands located across the English Channel from the rest of Europe. Next is the Scandinavia, a region of islands and peninsulas in far northern Europe. Iceland to the west is often considered a part of Scandinavia. There are also glaciers, which are slow-moving sheets of ice that covers the region. Farmland and plains can be found across the southern part of the region. They carve lakes and fjords. A fjord is a long, narrow, deep inlet of the sea between high cliffs, typically found in Norway and Iceland. Next will be the natural resources of Northern Europe. Northern Europe has many natural resources that have helped make it one of the world's wealthiest regions. Energy resources include oil and natural gas in areas of the North Sea controlled by the United Kingdom and Norway. Hydroelectric energy is created by the machines that are turned by flowing water channeled from lakes and rivers, while Iceland's hot springs produce geothermal energy or energy from the heat of the Earth's interior. To continue, the forests in Norway, Sweden, and Finland provide timber. A timber is a wood prepared for use in building and carpentry, while the seas and oceans that surround the region have provided fish and seafoods to the people of the Northern Europe for centuries. Let's proceed to the climates of Northern Europe. Although much of the region is very far north and close to the Arctic Circle, the climates in Northern Europe are surprisingly mild. The North Atlantic Drift is a warm ocean current that brings warm, moist air across the Atlantic Ocean to Northern Europe. Much of the region has a marine west coast climate with mild summers and frequent rainfall. Central Norway, Sweden, and southern Finland have a humid continental climate with 4 seasons. Further north are subarctic regions with long cold winters and short summers. Tundra and ice cap climates produce extremely cold temperatures year-round. Next will be the population in the Northern Europe. The Northern Europe is ethnically diverse country. It refers to the presence of people from a variety of cultural and ethnic backgrounds or identities. United Kingdom is the most populated and diverse in Northern Europe. The countries that have the highest population density are United Kingdom, Denmark, and Ireland, while London is the largest city, which is part of the United Kingdom. Copenhagen is the major tourist city, the Denmark's capital. Let's proceed to the government in Northern Europe. The first one is the constitutional monarchy in Sweden, United Kingdom, Norway, and Denmark. A constitutional monarchy is a system of government that is ruled by a king or queen whose power is limited by its country's constitution. The second one is the republic in Ireland, Iceland, and Finland. Republic is a state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. Denmark keep ties with Sweden and Norway. This trio, including the Iceland, are considered the most progressive nations in the world. Interestingly, 6 of the top 10 nations have female leaders. According to Forbes, Countries that educate, empower, and elect women offer all their citizens the highest level of well-being. When women do well, so does everyone. And these four countries have adopted legislation and policies to support rights and equality for women, minorities, and LGBT community. The religion in Northern Europe are all dominated by Christianity, but most are Lutheran or Protestant. Lutherans believe that humans are saved from sins by God's grace alone, through faith alone, while the Protestants is a follower of Christianity who does not believe in the supremacy of the Pope and considers Bible to be the supreme authority in Christianity. Most of the people in Ireland are Catholic. There is a religious freedom in all countries in Northern Europe. It protects people's rights to live, speak, and act accordingly to their beliefs peacefully and publicly. Next are the countries and culture of Northern Europe. People in Norway is very fond of cinemas, music, literature, and arts. While in Finland, you can watch live ice hockey while being in a sauna. Under the literature of Northern Europe, here is Hans Christian Andersen, a Danish author, and he is best remembered for his literary fairy tales like The Little Mermaid. Next is Soren Kierkegaard, a Danish theologian, and widely considered as the first existential philosopher. Existentialism is the philosophical belief where we are responsible for creating purpose or meaning in our own lives. While Alfred Nobel is famous for the annual Nobel Prize Awards that is being held in Stockholm, Sweden each year. He is also the inventor of dynamite. So this is the famous painting The Scream by Edvard Munch, a Norwegian painter in 1893. His childhood was overshadowed by illness, bereavement, and the dread of inheriting a mental condition that run in the family. So here are some landmarks in Northern Europe. There are active geysers, which is located in Iceland. A geyser is a spring characterized by an intermittent discharge of water ejected turbulently and accompanied by steam. The next one is the Aurora Borealis, also known as Northern Lights. It displays dynamic pattern of brilliant lights that appear as curtains, rays, spirals, or dynamic flickers covering the entire sky. From November to February, offer the darkest skies and longer evenings for maximum sky gazing. The lights tend to appear between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. Next is the common ingredients in Northern Europe. Fish and seafood are abundant in the northern region, especially the Bellon oysters, also known as European flat oyster. It is a species of oyster native to Europe. Its flavor is powerful, a potent coppery taste with a tannic accent, and a crisp bite to the plump meats. Next is apples. Apples are one of the most consumed fruits in Europe. It has been grown for 1,000 years in Asia and Europe. They make an apple brandy and apple cider and export it to other countries. Next is the dining customs and traditions in Northern Europe. The dining custom of Northern Europe is called European style, also known as continental style, wherein you keep both utensils in hand and feed yourself with your left hand where your fork remains and rest the right wrist on the edge of the table. The Nordic diet are seasonal foods that are high in protein, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats. Most ancient people in Northern Europe have consumed fish and seafoods because they are located in freshwater regions and sea coasts. So to know more about the cuisine of Northern Europe, let's watch this short clip entitled Behind the Scenes of Authentic Cuisine from Northern Europe. Enjoy watching!
You learn a lot to be a chef, not only from your staff and the people that you're working with, but also the guests that are coming from all parts of the world. You must understand culture. You're always hunting for new experience of taste and flavors. It's fantastic. My name is Casey Wahlberg. I'm the executive chef here at Gubbhyllan in Stockholm. And this is a restaurant where we do everything from the beginning. There is a very specific air when you go into a Swedish forest. It's much more refreshing, and the smell is different. You hear things that you don't hear in the city. You must go step into the forest to actually experience it. It's a huge difference when the berry wild because of the temperature. It becomes a very clean flavor from it. It's really, really dark purple ink inside. So if you smash one berry, you will have that color in your hand for 2-3 days. So you see who's picking blueberry and who's not. I always cook from one or a few ingredients and then I build the menu. And in this seasonal dinner, I will use wild duck. Arctic char is a salmon fish from the north part of Sweden, codfish, and of course blueberry. Sweden is interesting because it's a lot of different nature zones. And this creates different kind of food from different places. But the basic Swedish food, when you go back, has always been about to survive the next season. That's why we use a lot of pickling, acidity, salt, and curing to be able to save the ingredients for the next season. I think one of the most important techniques is to use salt in the right way. When you put salt on the ingredients, it becomes like a spice. But if you let the salt grow into the ingredients, you have a kind of curing that's very important in the Swedish gastronomy. The cuisine of Gubbhyllan is very important to preserve the techniques and the history, but also how you show the food on the plate. Because the last thing you do is to put the bite into your mouth. So everything must be in order. It's a very big honor to be able to host one meal for passengers from the Princess Cruises, and I choose to show them the Swedish cuisine. It's always good to see how the passenger tried the food, because it's 5 very significant flavors. It's all about sour and saltness, and very, very strict and sharp ground flavors. And it's fun to eat because it's, you have to try it. It's nice to know that when the passengers go back to the Princess Cruise, that they have really, really good kitchens and chefs on board, fresh ingredients, and they have well-prepared food for the rest of the journey. Fine dining for me is when you cook very well and you treat the ingredients very well, and I think that as many people as possible should be able to eat it. And if you have right techniques, then you can bring out very good food to many people instead of just a few.
Mabuhay! I'm Joshua Toca and I am from BSICM 2-2 and I'm going to take this presentation moving forward. So let's start now to methodology. So when it comes to methodology, when people move, they not only bring their food with them, but also the representation and ideals related to food that are good to eat. The memories of food from home, the ideals of good food, and the food that is available in new country shapes immigrants' food-related experiences. Swedes represents one of the largest immigrant group in Norway. Yet little is known about their eating habits when they cross the border to their neighboring country. This may in part be due to the nature of this migration, which consists of young people searching for short-term work to earn money. With the rising global exchange in many products, including foodstuffs, the culinary borders are becoming more and more blurred. Food habits in many European regions have changed considerably since the Second World War, influencing the traditional cuisine of country or region. In short, food can take us to new places, encouraging new encounters among people and allow us to observe societies from different perspectives. All right, so we're moving on now to famous dishes. Next slide, please. All right. In Denmark, their famous dishes is smørrebrød. So smørrebrød is a traditional Danish open-faced sandwich consisting of buttered rye bread that is topped with numerous ingredients and typically accompanied by vegetables, herbs, and salads. The topping includes ingredients such as cold cuts of meat, cheese, spreads of meatballs, caviar, and condiments such as mayonnaise. This sandwich was invented in the 19th century of Scandinavian agriculture workers who would pack in a variety of often faced sandwich for lunch, often made with leftovers from previous nights, in order to provide them with energy during the long working hours. Open faced sandwich are also common in other countries, such as in Austria. They're known as beleged brote. So, up next is Iceland. And in Iceland, they have seaweed. Seaweed is unusually and unique dish from Iceland consisting of singed, halved, and cooked sheep's head. The head is then cooked in an open fire in order to remove the fur and consumed. This dish is traditionally served with a side of mashed turnips, rhubarb jelly, and mashed potatoes, especially during the traditional Icelandic midwinter festival known as Porablot. Originally, the dish was invented at a time when people could not let any part of meat go to waste. Although seaweed has a reputation of being really tasty, some may find it strange to literally look the food into the eye. So, up next is we have Norway. And in Norway, we have lutefisk. Lutefisk is a Scandinavian dish made from dried white fish that's been treated with lye, resulting in the fish having a gelatinous consistency and often, depending on the type of a white fish, a very strong pungent odor. Both the Swedes and the Norwegian claim the dish as their own, but lutefisk is also prepared in Finland and in the United States, namely in the states of Minnesota, where it's predominantly consumed by Scandinavian immigrants. And up next, we have Latvia, and they have carbonade. Originating in Latvia, carbonade is the country's beloved take on the world famous Wiener Schnitzel. This meat specially in typical made with thinly poured pork cutlet that is coated in a combination of flour, beaten eggs, and sometimes breadcrumbs before it is fried to perfection. A savory chanterelle mushroom sauce is usually spooned over the finished pork schnitzel before serving, while sides such as boiled potatoes with dill, french fries, cabbage salad, pickled vegetables, and slice of rye bread often accompany the whole dish. In Latvia, apart from being a common home cooked dish, carbonade is also available in numerous cafeterias, and it's also typically dish served at wedding bouquet. And moving forward to Lithuania, we have Shaltibarshche. This refreshing cold beetroot soup is a part of a traditional Lithuanian cuisine. It consists of creamy blend of pickled or boiled beetroots and tangy kefir or buttermilk, poured over grated cucumber and hard-boiled eggs. The whole soup is generously seasoned with dill and usually left to set until the flavors are thoroughly combined. It is usually prepared in the summertime and is best served chilled, preferably with potatoes on the side. It can be enjoyed as an appetizer or a light main course. So moving forward, we have Finland and their famous dish called uh, next slide please. Lohikeito. Lohikeito is a creamy Finnish salmon soup that is also known as laksopa in Sweden. Apart from chunks of salmon fillet, it is traditionally incorporated diced potatoes and carrots, cooked in a flavorful buttery broth infused with fish stock and cream. This comforting winter dish is generously seasoned with dill and served alongside butter-dried bread or lemon wedges. So up next, we have Sweden. All right, so in Sweden, they have köttbullar. Köttbullar are famous Swedish meatballs with crispy brown exterior and light, airy, and tender texture on the interior. The original recipe for the dish first appeared in Kaj Sa Warg in 1754 cookbook. The meatball usually consists of beef mixed with pork or veal, and the combination is typically seasoned with onions, salt, pepper, and all spices. The mixture is shaped into a small round meatball and browned in hot butter. The dish is traditionally accompanied by ligonberry sauce, creamy and mashed potatoes, and a thick gravy on the side, although lighter side dishes such as cucumber salad or red cabbage are also quite popular. All right, so moving on to Estonia, they have pirukas. Pirukas is a typically Estonian snack consisting of dough packets filled with variety of ingredients. It can be classified into three categories: small baked, small fried, and also large baked. The dough can be made with crumbly, flaky, puffy pastry or with regular bread dough. The fillings range from meat, ham, and cabbage to rice, mushroom, and carrots. Small pirukas can be filled with a variety of different ingredients, but the large ones are filled with the large ones are filled excessively with cabbage, meats, and carrots. Moving forward to Ireland and their famous Irish stew. Irish stew is a traditional folk stew that first appeared at the beginning of the 19th century and was developed out of necessarily to make a meal out of availability. Um, Most common is leftover ingredients. Originally, the stew was made only with muttons, onions, potatoes, and sometimes barely with lambs and meats, and other root vegetables like carrots, turnips, and parsnips. It is said that goat meats was also used in the past, but beside the previously mentioned muttons and lambs, beef is a commonly additionally in today's recipe. And of course, lastly, in United Kingdom, they have their famous fish and chips. So in fish and chips, most Brits would agree that there is nothing more British than fish and chips. This is comforting, widely loved nationally dish consists of a freshly fried hot white fish fillet and a large slice and fried potatoes. Cod, haddock, and Flanders are the most common types of white fish that is fried for the fish and chips, and the customers can choose which type of fish they want, with cod being the most popular one. The fillet gets dips in a butter made out of egg, milk, and flour, and are then fried in oil, lard of beef, dripping along with the potatoes. The origins of this dish go back to 17th centuries when potatoes were fried as a substitute for fish in the winter of months, while fried fish was introduced into a country by Jewish refugees. Fish and chips are favorite takeaway dish with numerous chippies popping up all over the countries, offering few accompaniments sides such as salt, vinegar, mushy peas, curry sauce, ketchup, brown sauce, and a cup of sweet milk tea. So those are the famous dishes in the Northern Europe. Let's now move on to rare and special preparations. So for centuries before the medieval period and for centuries afterward, human being is in all parts of the world used a variety of methods to preserve foods for later consumption. European in the Middle Age were no exception. A society that was largely agrarian would be keenly aware of the need to store up provisions against the ominous threats of famine, drought, and warfare. The possibility of disaster wasn't the only motivation for preserving food. Dried, smoked, pickled, honeyed, and salted foods have their own particularly flavors, and many recipes survive detailing how to prepare food that have been stored with these methods. Preserved foods were also much easier for the sailors, soldiers, merchants, or pilgrims to transport. For fruits and vegetables to be enjoyed out of season, they had to be preserved. And in some regions, in particular, foodstuff could only be enjoyed in preserved form because it didn't grow or wasn't raised nearby. Virtually any kind of food could be preserved. How it was done depend on what type of food it was and whether the particular effect was desired. Here are some of the methods of food preservation used in medieval Europe. So, next slide, please. So, the first one is drying foods to preserve. Today, we understand that the moisture allows for the rapid microbiological growth of bacteria, which is present in all fresh foods and which causes them to decay. But it isn't necessary to understand the chemical process involved in order to observe that the food that is wet and left in the open will quickly start to smell and attract bugs. So it should come as no surprise that one of the oldest methods of preserving food known to man is that drying it. Preserving food with salt. Salting was the most common way to preserve virtually any types of meat or fish, as it drew out the moisture and killed the bacteria. Vegetable might be preserved with dry salt as well, though pickling was more common. Salt was also used in conjunction with other methods of preservation such as drying and smoking. Speaking of smoking, smoking meat and fish is up next. Smoking meat and fish. Smoking was another fairly common way to preserve meat, especially fish and pork. Meat would be cut into relatively thin, lean strips, immersed briefly in salt solution, and hung over a fire to absorb the smoky flavoring as it dried slowly. Occasionally, the meat might be smoked without a salt solution, especially if the type of food burned had a distinctive flavoring of its own. However, salt was still very helpful because of its discouraged flies. It inhibited the growth of bacteria and hastened the removal of moisture. Up next is pickling foods. Immersing fresh vegetables and other foods in liquid solution of salt brine was a fairly common practice in medieval Europe. In fact, although the term pickle didn't came into use in the English until the late Middle Ages, the practice of pickling goes back to ancient times. Not only would this method preserve fresh food for months so that it could be eaten out of season, but it could infuse it with strong, piquant flavors. Alright, so moving forward to confits. Although the term confit has come to refer to virtually any food that has been immersed in a substance for preservation, and today can sometimes refer to a type of fruit preserve, in the Middle Ages, confit were potted meat. Confits were most usually, but not solely, made from fowl or pork. To make a confit, the meat was salted and cooked in a very long time in its own fat, then allowed to cool on its own fat. It was then sealed up in its own fat, of course, and stored in a cool place where it could last for months. And of course, last but not the least, we have freezing and cooling. The weather of the greater part of Europe throughout much of the Middle Ages was rather temperate. In fact, there is often some discussion of the medieval warm period, overlapping the end of the early Middle Ages and the beginning of high medieval Europe. So, freezing was not an obvious method of preserving foods. However, most areas of Europe did see snowy winters, and freezing was at times a viable option, especially in northern regions. In castles and large homes with cellars, an underground room could be used to keep food packed in winter ice through cooler spring months and into the summer. In the long frigid Scandinavian winters, an underground room wasn't necessary. So those are some unique and rare special preparations in Northern Europe. So let's now move forward to interesting facts about countries. So the first one is there are no mosquitoes in Iceland. Mosquitoes plague many countries in Northern Europe and around the world, but Iceland has been spared. It is largely down to the fact that the volcanic island doesn't have the best breeding condition for the insects to thrive. Up next is Sweden is the most populated country in Northern Europe. Although the northern part of Sweden are much less populated than the southern areas, the Scandinavian country is still by far the biggest in country with a population of 10.3 million. Up next is 75% of Finland is covered by forest. The forests in Finland are made of 30 indigenous tree species, but pine trees are the most common, closely followed by spruce and birch. The forest coverage in Finland is higher than any other country in Europe. So, up next is much of the land in Northern Europe is actually on the rise. It is true. While some countries and regions around the world are being heavily impacted by climate change, rising sea levels and sinking lands, some of the Nordic regions is rising. This is because of something called post-glacial rebound. It happens because of huge glaciers in the last ice age forced the land downwards under their sheer weight. Up next is people drink more coffee in Northern Europe than anywhere else in the world. People in Northern Europe sure do love their coffee. The Nordic countries regularly tops the charts for the coffee consumption. According to the worldatlas.com, Finland tops the list with 26.45 pounds per person per year. Norway occupies the second place with a score of 21.82 pounds, followed by Iceland of 19.84 pounds and Denmark with 19.18 pounds. And lastly, villages in Northern Europe have the shortest place names. It may be difficult to believe, but in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, there are some village names that are just one letter long. In total, there are 10 places that can be boast these remarkable titles. 9 villages across the 3 Scandinavian countries are named A, while in Sweden there is a place called O. And next slide, please. All right. Thank you so much for listening with us again. My name is Joshua Toca from BSIC M2-2, together with my partner, Jessica Garcia. We are at your service.